from Montgomery County. Jennifer Heapy is the CEO of Section 8, and she's here to talk about all the new things and explain the program. And please, she is more than willing to answer your questions.
Thank you. Good evening. Sorry it took us, thank you. It took us a little while to get that up and going. It's almost like it was a government laptop is what I told them. I have a lot of experience with those. So thank you again for having me here tonight. I want to thank you on behalf of my employees and my board of directors, as well as the people that we serve in the community. And I see some familiar faces out there. And I have given a couple other presentations, specifically to GDAA, some of our landlords that already participate in the program, as well as the city of Dayton. So for those of you who have maybe seen one of my presentations before, I tried to change it up so you wouldn't be hearing the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to go over a little bit, like, what is a public housing authority? What exactly do we do? And then obviously I'm going to get into the Section 8 program, some changes that we've made as a result of listening to landlords. I've had a lot of conversations with landlords. We've been looking at the program, working with HUD to try and build in and exploit some efficiencies. And I'm also going to talk to you about some things that are going to be coming up probably before the end of the year and then continuing into next year. So it's not working. There it goes. It is very delayed, so we'll go back real quick. So obviously our mission is to develop housing solutions and to improve the neighborhoods. And we're going to talk a little bit about how specifically we do that. So we're not just Section 8. We also own and manage our own rental units. So those are units just like every other landlord. We have to collect rent. We're responsible for all the capital needs, everything associated with the management and ownership of those properties. We do offer some resident services. Specifically, we have a family self-sufficiency department where we help individuals if they want to, and if they're willing, we help them move along to home ownership. We also do redevelopment. We are also real estate developers, and we'll kind of go over some of the things that we've been doing within our jurisdiction, which is Montgomery County in its entirety. We have about 2,700 actual rental units within the county. So as most of you know, public housing is very old and has a lot of needs. Ohio specifically has very old public housing. They are over 45 years old. That's on average. We have some housing units that were built in the early 1930s. And the last time that we did a full physical needs assessment of all of our portfolio, we needed about $135 million in capital upgrades. That's a lot of money. From HUD, we get some capital funds, but you can see on average how much we get directly from HUD to do all of those necessary repairs and capital improvements for all of our properties. We have about 70 sites across the county. So when you have over $130 million in capital needs, $7 million a year ain't gonna cut it, right? So several years ago, we undertook a little bit of a different model that I'll go into, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to pull ourselves away from as much government assistance and move more into more of a private market management. So when we do our redevelopment, and I'll show you a couple of our projects that we've completed or that we're working on, we get them from a lot of different sources. We are able to use some of those capital funds, but we do rely a lot on low-income housing tax credits. And I don't know if anybody here has used those to do redevelopment projects. But in essence, what it is a portion of the Internal Revenue Code. And so you go out and you get investors, and they put money into the redevelopment, and as a result, they get to write a very large portion of that off on their taxes. Now, these are very big investors. These are hedge funds. These are very large regional banks. We use some county money. We take on private debt, just like I'm sure a lot of you do. As part of these redevelopment plans, we take out mortgages. We're also able to issue our own bonds, and we've done that in a couple instances as well. These are some of the projects that we've already done. Over the last couple of years, we've done $39 million in redevelopment right here in Montgomery County. 346 units, equals about 15% of our portfolio, and a majority of those units are within the city of Dayton. But we do have some that are in Centerville, West Carrollton, Kettering. We have some where the kids go to Oakwood schools, and you probably wouldn't even realize that they're public housing. That's southern Montgomery County. We did Centerville, some ones in Washington Township. The total development cost was about $31 million, and we completely renovated 163 units. We have completed that already, and the families are back in their new units. One of those developments is called Westerfield. It's right kind of in the heart of Centerville. That's what the building looked like before. This is what the building looks like now, completely renovated on the outside and inside. Let's think about it. We also did some interior upgrades, created a new playground for the children outside. This is another site that's in West Carrollton that we completely redid the outside. Yeah, question?
Are these Section 8 tenants that go in here or not?
These are ones that we actually own and operate, but the funding source is Section 8. So believe it or not, the Public Housing Authority is also a Section 8 landlord. Hallmark Meridian is another project we're going to have hopefully done by the end of the year. It's a $14 million project. It's an elderly high-rise. It's kind of down near the Dayton Art Institute. And you can see kind of just for an example, the financing sources and the capital stack that's involved. I'm trying to go through this quickly because I know you really have questions about the Section 8. But I wanted to kind of give you an overview. Hallmark Meridian was really an upgrading of the systems, plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, the elevators, and then a refresh of the interior units. Another project that we're getting ready to do is a $16 million project. It's actually on the west side of Dayton. It is adjacent to our DeSoto Bass housing site, which is our oldest, built again in the early 1930s. The picture you see on the left was what was previously the Daymont Health Center, right along Germantown. We purchased the site along with the city demolished it, and we're getting ready to build brand new units there. It's actually going to be 50 units. It's going to be a family site consisting of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. This is what the building's going to look like from the outside. We're going to have on-site laundry, as many amenities as we can. We're also going to have accessible units and resident services right on site. We're also involved in building a healthy family market, again, on Germantown, right down from the DeSoto Bass housing site. This is going to be a brand new market for that community. and this is what it's going to look like when it's done. So we're participating in that as well. We put about $1 million into that. We also were involved and put approximately $1 million into the Gem City Market, which hopefully you all go to. We were proud to be part of that. We have some housing sites that are right there adjacent to it, and it serves a lot of our residents in the community, so we thought that that was an important investment as well. We were awarded another tax credit. We have a lot of redevelopment going on for my small but very mighty team. We received another tax credit award. So part of us redeveloping the entire DeSoto Bass housing site, the Germantown Crossing, which I mentioned earlier, which is going to be actually located at the Daymont Health Center. We will, once that's built, 50 of our families will move into that new housing. We will demolish where they were living. We will then begin building Renew Miami Chapel. That's going to be an additional 50 units. They're going to be townhomes. Again, a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We're hoping to start that early next year, and we'll be finished by the end of 2025. So as part of this, we had some visioning on what to do at DeSoto. And so I'm going to share this with you, just to kind of show you how we're going to be phasing it in the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of redevelopment that will occur. So we worked with an architecture firm, and what you're seeing here is right along where this red area is where we'll begin demolishing the old, outdated properties. Right along in front of that is Germantown, so we're going to be working down Germantown to completely refresh that corridor. Just to the left of that is where Germantown Crossing will be. And then it's going to take about 9 phases, so I'm not going to go through all the phases with you. But that first one there will be the one that we have already been awarded, that we hope to finish by the end of next year. We'll give that some time to catch up. But what will happen is then, just to the right of that, we'll have new housing there built. And then we're going to work our way all the way back. You probably can't see it, but these red dots are kind of the footprint of DeSoto. And we'll just work our way down until eventually it will look like this. These units back here in the back will be the last part, and we hope for those to be single-family home ownership, working with our residents. So it's going to be a combination of townhomes, stacked units. We will have resident services again on site. And again, we are doing this all through a conversion where we will be using Section 8 vouchers to support the rents. But we will continue to own and operate. Wilkinson, this is going to be our last big project for a while. This building is completely empty. For those of you who know downtown very well, this is our only site downtown. We're looking to dispose of it. We've been approached multiple times to sell it. I don't think we're going to sell it. We think we're going to demolish it. We're going to put something much smaller there. And we think that it's uniquely positioned because it's so close to Sinclair that we could do something for a special population of people, maybe single parents who are looking to complete their education while they're going to Sinclair, really kind of looking at a multi-generational way of doing housing. But there's 200 units in there. We would never put 200 units back. Okay, housing choice voucher. So I want to give you a little bit of background with the data of how we manage the program and what the demand is and some of the stats we've been looking at. And then we'll kind of go through, I'll go through the process, and then I'll talk about some of the updates that we're doing. We get enough money for approximately 4,500 vouchers, okay? That's an allocation for Montgomery County, Ohio. We open this wait list relatively infrequently, probably about every 3 or 4 years. So when we open it up for a week or two, we get a lot of applicants. The EOP is end of participation. These are the people that fall off the program, which could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be that they were non-compliant with the program, or they don't need it anymore, or they've taken that voucher and gone to a different jurisdiction. Issuance to HAP. HAP stands for Housing Assistance Payments. We use a lot of acronyms, so I apologize if I don't explain each one. But 2.47 months is about the time if somebody is successful in finding a place to use the voucher. It's taking them about 2.5 months to do that. The PUC is the per unit cost. So what we're paying to the landlords, our portion on average is about $607 a month. Right now, our utilization rate, which is how many vouchers are actually under lease and a landlord receiving a housing assistance payment, is about 86%. But year to date, we've spent about 95.6% of the money that HUD gives us. And the reason for that, and I'll get into that in a little bit, is we're actually paying 120% of the fair market rent. So because we've increased how much we're willing to pay the landlords, we use up more of the budget, so we might not have as many vouchers actually being utilized. I hope that makes sense. And then VOS is vouchers on the street. We have about 353 families looking right now. Outside of that allocation, we do administer some special programs that HUD has awarded us. Not all housing authorities have these particular allocations. Emergency housing vouchers, that came out of COVID. We were allocated 115 of those. Family unification program, that's for individuals who are involved in children's services, and the last component of their plan is to get stable housing. It also applies to youth who are aging out of the foster care system. They qualify for those as well. Homeful, most of you know Homeful here within the community. They provide housing. Mainstream is for individuals who, if not for the voucher, they might be institutionalized, and that's the term that HUD uses, not my choice. St. Vincent's, we help subsidize their housing. Veterans, we work with the VA for homeless veterans, 198. And also we provide housing for the YWCA. For those of you who don't know, the YWCA down in Dayton actually has 65 units of housing in that building for women. HUD also allows us to give preferences, so those people who get on our waiting list, if they fall within a certain level of preference, then they go a little bit higher on the waiting list. So we give preferences to victims of domestic violence, veterans or spouses, the elderly, disabled, and the homeless. All right, I know this is always a big topic, so inspections. HUD requires us to do certain types of inspections, okay? And you'll hear us refer to, if any of you are involved in the program, called HQS, again, an acronym. It stands for Housing Quality Standards. And we're gonna get into this a little bit, but what we have been doing internally, really kind of starting at the beginning of the year, but hearing a lot of feedback from the landlords and going back and looking through the regulations and saying, what can we do, what kind of changes can we make, what changes can't we make, and if we can change them, How are we going to implement them and get HUD's approval? So, housing quality standards. Our book is about, it's like 35 or 40 pages of things that the unit must have or not have in order to pass. It's excessive. It's overly excessive, and we acknowledge that. So we have put a group together, a small group, myself and a couple other people that work in the voucher department to say what is really important. Some of these things aren't, they're cosmetic. At the end of the day, if this were someone in the open market, this would be between me and my landlord. If I think the carpet is dirty or it needs to be repainted, that's something that we should not be involving ourselves in. We need to be more focused on health and safety issues, right? So I want to tell you, as a result of your feedback and us going back and looking, we are working on that. It's just going to take a couple months to finish it up, and again, we have to get approval from HUD, but I think that you will be much happier. It's going to help us also. It's going to be more efficient for us. Our inspectors aren't going out all the time, so I appreciate all of the feedback that y'all gave. So we have to do an initial inspection, we have to do an annual inspection, we have to do inspections for certain types of complaints, and then there's also an option of a move-out inspection. And we're making changes to those as well, and as I get to another slide, I'll go over those. So the other question that always comes up is, how much can I charge? Am I going to get paid less than what I can get from someone who doesn't have a voucher? What does that look like for me? So there are two components to make the determination of how much you would be receiving from us. So we have the payment standard. So the payment standard is the maximum monthly assistance payment that we can give to a landlord, okay? It also takes into consideration the fair market rate and rent, and is it reasonable? So maybe I should go to this first here. Let's go to this. So these are our current bedroom payment standards. So let's kind of walk through this. Say you had a 2-bedroom, and the max we'll pay is $1,162. And this is based on what HUD gives us. We don't make up this number. But this $1,162 added in the additional 20% that we got approval for. So you've got a 2-bedroom, $1,162. What we then have to look at, is that rent reasonable for the location where it is, the amenities that are within the unit, and other things, like how new is it, those types of things. So, if that payment standard comes back as reasonable for the location that you are and the amenities included, that would be the total payment that would go to you. Now, some of that might come from the tenant, depending on their income, but this is the rent that you could charge, okay? If the rent reasonableness comes back as, no, actually the market will bear $1,000, then that is the total maximum amount that we could pay you. We plus the tenant. So hopefully that makes sense. This is the maximum, but it's always subject to what is reasonable for the location and the amenities.
Do you have to deduct the utilities off of that?
It depends. If you are including utilities in there, then that is part, let's say you do. So the question was, do you have to deduct utilities off that? If you are a landlord that is paying for the utilities, that is included in the rent reasonable. If you don't, that's also taken into consideration. But when they come up with the fair market rent, they do not include the assumption that the landlord will be paying the rent. Does that make sense?
Paying utilities, not paying rent.
I'm sorry.
Go back to that screen. 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
I, as a landlord, pay no utilities.
Mhm.
Will I get 1162?
If
Depends
it's
on the area.
rent reasonable,
Okay.
let's assume that it is. What we do is we take into account the amount that the tenant is going to have to pay in utilities, and in some instances, we help support them with the utilities.
My answer to my question is, will we get 1162?
If it's rent reasonable,
I
yes.
understand that part.
Yes, the
Then-
utilities are not part of it. If it's 1162 and the market will bear it, you're gonna get the 1162.
How did you guys come up with
You-
those
you're-
figures?
You're looking at me like you're skeptical, tell me why.
This doesn't make sense. I live in a different county, okay?
Mhm.
There's a maximum that they do for a 2-bedroom,
Mhm.
okay? Whatever that number is, I don't know off the top of my head. Then you go over and you put that on the sheet, and then who pays the heat bill?
Mhm.
Tenant. Well, you deduct based on how many bedrooms and whether it's gas, electric, propane,
Mhm.
heat, coal, whatever. I don't think they do coal anymore.
Yeah.
I thought I'd throw that in, see if I was listening.
Geothermal, all
And
this
you
different.
deduct all that down. Do I provide the stove? Do I provide the refrigerator?
Absolutely.
I deduct all that off, and then what's at the bottom is what I get.
Mhm.
But you're saying it's not that way in Montgomery County.
Well, what I'm saying is, and maybe we're kind of talking past each other here, but what I'm saying is if you are, but as part of that, don't they include, if you pay the water, they include that as an amount that you can include in your rent?
If they
So,
give you a total, okay?
Yes.
2-bedroom will pay this much.
uh-huh.
Then you go with the utility allowance sheet, and you deduct everything that the tenant's got to pay. Water, sewer, trash, electric, cooking, da-da-da-da-da. Then what's at the bottom of that is what you actually get a check from, either partially the tenant and Section 8.
And I think we were saying the same thing, but maybe differently, and maybe I wasn't expressing myself properly. If it's not included in the rent, it will be deducted. If it is included, typically, yeah. And maybe we'll talk afterwards. We'll talk afterwards.
Well, I mean, everybody needs to know the answer.
Well,
Will they get-
and that's
Will they get
fine.
1162 if the tenant pays all the utilities? That's, yes, no, if it's rent reasonable, I understand that
Yes.
thing. But isn't the fair market rate set by HUD, fair market rent?
Yes, yes. They collect data from all over the country,
And
and they make
Cincinnati's
the
different than
determination.
Dayton, and
Correct.
Cleveland's different than Columbus, and
And Montgomery County is different than Miami County, and yes.
Do you mean that that is what the landlord is credited for, and then all these deductions that he's alluding to,
What I'll do,
as opposed to,
what I'll tell you I will do is I will provide a worksheet, an example worksheet with a hypothetical rent calculation. How about that? And what we'll do is we'll do one where it says, these utilities are included, these utilities are not. How about that? And then I can provide that to the group. Would there be a way to provide that to everyone if I emailed that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay?
Thank you.
How about if we do that?
and then I have another question.
Yes.
Could you give us an example of the neighborhoods where those figures would be applicable?
So here, and it's up to each public housing authority how they want to do it. We do it based on the county in its entirety. So anywhere in the county. Some housing authorities do it by zip code. So you're going to have, depending on where the zip code is is going to determine what your fair market rent is. Now, what happens is 1162 in one part of the county might not be enough, but in other parts of the county, it might be way over, right? If you go to small area FMR, it's going to be, you're stuck in that number. Yes?
How do you determine what's reasonable?
Good question. So we are required to have an outside vendor do that. We do not do that internally. So we use a company that is approved by HUD called Nelrod, and a lot of housing authorities use it. So what we do is it's a database. We put in the address, we put in the amenities that you've made us aware of, and what it does is it brings up your unit and 3 comparison units. And then it tells us if you fall within what the rent you're asking, if it's reasonable for that area based on the comps.
So saying that, then it's truly not a county-wide. I thought you just said that you guys do one thing county-wide.
That's our payment standard.
Okay.
When we're looking at rent reasonable, that's something that HUD makes us look at.
Okay.
How does
Good question.
Nelrod get their information? I mean, what is their way of,
Yes, so they do nationwide research. I know they use Zillow, they use a couple other different programs, but we are required to use a HUD-approved vendor, and they're one of maybe 3, but they do it nationwide.
And they go with private market, not just.
Yep, private market, not subsidized.
I got a question. So, just looking at the 4-bedroom, right, I know this is just random statistics, but let's say you're renting a house for $900, and I know Section 8, the most you can get in a year is $100, right?
No, that's no more.
Oh, it's not?
No, we did away with that. We just did away with that. That's one of the updates.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No, you're good. That's a good question, and I'm glad, but we'll get to it.
Okay.
Where's the $100 reference? I don't know.
Sure. So the question was, when landlords would ask for an annual rent increase, there was a built-in cap on it.
Oh, okay.
Like you can't ask for more than $100.
Gotcha.
And to go ahead and answer the question, you're now only going to be bound by rent reasonable. So if you want to raise, obviously this is still the max, but say rent reasonable for what you're charging $900 for now, the rent reasonable comes back at $1,200, we'll increase your coverage to $1,200.
So just to clarify on that one, so if we request a rent increase of 100 and rent reasonable comes back and says it's capped at 90, then you'll do it at 90. It won't just be
Yes,
kicked out.
we'll communicate with you that, hey, this came back, because we have to run the rent reasonable anyways. So it'll come back and it'll tell us. We'll communicate that with you. Hey, we can only do 90. Are you okay with that? You still want to go forward? Okay, this is just, once you sign the lease, you give us a copy of the lease. You sign the half contract with us, and you should start receiving your monthly payment. We do that only by direct deposit. For those of you who have been in the program, that's how it's been for a while. Okay, so I want to talk to you about some of the things that we've done. We did hire a landlord liaison. He is relatively new. We've added him as an additional layer of customer service. He will be an individual that you will be able to contact directly instead of trying to get in touch with some of the research specialists. So he can get up, he can find out where that inspection is, where your tenant is in the process. We're doing some other things to increase our utilization. We're looking to project-base some vouchers That just means that the vouchers would be attached to specific units. They wouldn't be tenant-owned. We've started doing pre-inspection assessments on the weekend. I've been paying some of my inspectors overtime. If you would like an inspector to come in and take a look at a unit and not be like an actual inspection, we can do that for you. We brought on a couple inspection contractors also to get through all of the inspections. We're going to go to HUD and ask for approval that we only have to do inspections every 2 years instead of every year. I think that that will be more efficient. It's something that HUD has just started allowing us to do, so we just have to go through that process.
Has it been approved yet?
It has not been approved yet. HUD will allow us to do it. Just like everything, when we want to change something, we got to draw it up, we got to take it to our board, it's got to be open for public comment, and then HUD has to give us our blessing. So, again, we're looking at that HQS overhaul that we're hoping before the end of the year will be much more streamlined, much more focused on health and safety issues. We're going to be going completely online. Now, I know those landlords that are participants in the program, you have the landlord portal, but we're going to start doing research online, lease signings online if you want to, electronic signatures. We want to speed up the process as much as possible. Again, rent increases up to fair market rent and rent reasonableness. Hoping you will like that. Photos instead of reinspection. We've already piloted that, so we've had some landlords take advantage of that. We're going to roll that out to everyone very soon. If you've just got a couple things that didn't pass, take a picture. Hey, it's fixed, or here's where I had the guy work on it. You shoot us a picture, we approve it, you move on, instead of having to wait for an inspector to come back out.
Do we need to send you any notice?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to depend on what it is, right? And so for those of you who have been with the program for a while, Daryl Miles, who is the HCV manager, Elaine Letton, who used to be the senior VP of the agency, retired. So Daryl and I have been working very closely. It doesn't have to be, it's going to, like if it's, you didn't get your furnace inspected, either send us something that shows you had somebody come out and look at it, or the tag or something. We're going to try and be as flexible as possible with that. And we know some of you guys are going to do your own work. Just, you know, shoot us a picture of it so that we have record of it. Our 120% fair market rent, we got approval from HUD for that through the end of the year. I have submitted an additional waiver. I'm hoping to hear it soon, so that will continue into next year. That is something that is specifically HUD requires that we get approval. We're changing how the specialists work. We kind of, during COVID, we had a hard time keeping employees. We got away from the specialists doing A to Z. Kind of had, oh, you're good at leasing, we'll put you over here. Oh, you're good at doing this, we'll put. No, we're going back. If a specialist has a file, they're doing A to Z. That way, they're not handing it off. I hand it off to you, and you're off the next day. You're sick, or you're on vacation. No, you do A to Z, and we think everything is going to flow a little bit better. There's going to be more accountability, and we're hoping that it moves a little better.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What is a specialist? What do they do? I'm sorry.
The specialists, thank you. The specialists are HCV specialists, so they handle all of the annual, anything having to do with the tenant. So they do income changes, rent changes, recertifications, that kind of thing. But they're also going to be working with the landlords, making sure, hey, do you have a lease? Can you email me the lease? I'll walk it over. I'll get your HAP payment. So one person is dealing with that tenant and the associated landlord from A to Z.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a big improvement.
Yeah. Now that's all I had. My next slide says questions, and I know that you've been asking questions along, which I appreciate. I like the questions, so yes.
Is that 120% of the fair market rent? Is that 120% of the rent reasonableness? Is that? No. Okay.
No.
I'm stuck on
So,
rent.
no, you're fine. I know it's weird. So let me show you something. So they just released the fair, every year HUD comes out with the fair market rent. Based on, they do this very long calculation, okay? So for 2024, I'll just give this as an example. They're saying the fair market rent is $800 for a 1-bedroom, okay? Now, we have asked, can you add an additional 20% on top of that, right? So that's another 160, so it'd be $960, okay? That is dictated to us from HUD. We have no input on that.
So,
Yeah.
for a 1-bedroom, we could collect 960 or 800.
It's at 960 because we have gotten approval from HUD to add an additional 20% premium over and above what they have deemed to be the payment standard for Montgomery County.
Well, you gonna go through the whole list?
Yeah, I can. These haven't been released yet, so you're the first ones hearing it. So 1-bedroom is $800. So with the additional 20%, if we get approved, would be $960. A 2-bedroom is $1,023. Again, if we get approved for the additional 20%, it would be $1,227.60. 3-bedroom is $1,330, which would bump it up to $1,596. 4-bedroom is $1,459, which would bump it up to $1,750.80.
All of that, just to clarify, all of that is before it's compared to rent reasonableness?
Right, that is the ceiling
Yeah.
with the rent reasonable dictating.
You're liable to rent more units this way.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
I'm just being honest with our landlords.
Oh, no, I get it. I totally understand. At the end of the day, it's a business. I get it. I'm a different kind of landlord in public housing, but I can tell you, I tell people all the time, it's one of the hardest businesses you can be in. You know, when you were talking about the water bill, I'm like, sign me up, that, and I can't tell you how many tenants I've had switch because they have to pay their own utilities, have switched it over to Greater Dayton Premier Management. We had that a couple of years ago. I mean, we had to go round and round, but, and damage to the unit, and HUD doesn't give us money to do that. They expect us to collect rent. HUD doesn't give us any money for the money that we're expected to collect under rent. During COVID, we had, it was about $1.4 million in rent that was owed to us. Now that'll destroy an agency. And
They'll destroy us.
it would, right. I mean, it would completely put us under. Thank goodness the rental assistance was out there and we were able to capture some of the money, but that was not money that HUD was coming to give us. Because when they give us money, they expect your main duty is to collect rent. And when people just stop paying rent for a long time, it's difficult to keep your operation running. So, yes, sir.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
could you help us understand what a month is? That is, when does a month start and when does it end? Other than while the people are there, but what happens before? How long does it take to get the month started, and how long does it take to recover at the end of the month, whether they're there or not or something?
So let me repeat your question because I want to make sure I understand it, okay, and I want other people to hear it. So what you're asking is you have a tenant move in, when does their month start so far as when you get the payment from us?
Well, that's the easy part.
Okay.
When's the tenant move in?
Well, that's up to you. That's up to you when you want, if you want someone to move in on the 14th of the month, and then that's what you want to do, then we prorate, and then you start up the next month. Yes, sir.
I have my tenants move in as soon as the inspector says it's passed. They move in that day, the clock starts.
And we do, also, we do fast track leasing, so if the inspectors come back at the end of the day, they're supposed to come back and say which units passed, we try and schedule the leasing the next day. So you can have, that's up to you when you have the person move in. And maybe I'm not understanding your
I
question.
didn't ask that well enough.
Okay.
Let's say at day zero, whatever, we've got the apartment ready. Somebody comes and I suppose they already have a voucher from you, and they say yes. We do a background check. Then can they move in quickly, or is there a delay for agency inspection? There must be. How long does that take?
Yeah. So right now, we're trying to get them done within 5 business days. And we're doing that in a couple different ways. Brought the contractors on, and we're also looking at how we do scheduling, almost like a doctor's office. We do something where we might leave 1 or 2 appointment times open for an emergency or something to get them in the next day. I wouldn't want to tell you how to run your property, but I would not move someone in until that unit has passed inspection, if that's the person you want. Because we have had that happen in the past. We have people move in, and then a month or 2 later or something, not that you do this, they say, oh, I have a voucher, and maybe the unit doesn't pass, and then they come back and they get mad at us. I have one that I'm dealing with right now. She moved in, got the actually had the voucher, but didn't tell the landlord, and then, so my suggestion would be to make sure you get that inspection cleared, if you choose that tenant.
So it might be a week or 2 or something like that.
We hope that it doesn't go that long. We got a lot of families out searching, so sometimes we get a little bit bombarded. But we try and schedule those inspections as soon as possible.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yes?
Yes, ma'am. How does a company support you in the properties that you manage for the services that you need?
I was going to come talk to you afterwards. I already wrote down your name. Because we're a government entity, we have to do a bidding process. So I will give you one of my business cards.
Okay.
Typically for different types of services, like let's say heating and air conditioning, usually we'll do that on a yearly basis with up to 3-year extensions. So I'll give you my card before I leave.
Okay, thank you.
We're always looking for new vendors. I saw another hand. Yes, ma'am.
If you have an inspection and it doesn't pass, okay, the tenant's been in there for 2-3 years, it's a yearly inspection, the inspector comes in, okay, there's a few things, and there's a re-inspect. It would be nice to have the same inspector come out, because I had one and they were upset about the letters that we put up. The second one was, I'm like, really?
Yeah. And that is something that we've been working on, because I see that as a legitimate concern, right? You feel like somebody's moving the goalposts on you a little bit, let's put it that way. And I think we're trying to address that in a couple different ways. And that is minimizing what we're looking at in the inspection so that they're not looking at 35 pages worth of stuff, 40 pages worth of stuff. And then also using the photographs. I think that is going to be a big deal, because it's not going to be another inspector necessarily coming back. It's going to be somebody in an office looking at it. So they're not coming back out to the unit.
I have a piggyback question on
Yes.
Scar's question. So once you, if you have an inspector and they come out and they call out something that you really just is outside of the lines, like that's just not fair, is there a process or is the inspector God? Like that's where I know a lot of landlords have an issue, and that's where I've had trouble. Because sometimes it becomes personal. It's not even about the safety, quality. It's just a personal thing, and I don't like that, and I
Yeah,
think that's
sure.
unnecessary.
Right. No, I get it. And part of that is dealing with human beings.
Sure,
but,
sure.
Yeah. Again, I
But a nice
think-
guy like me, you know, why would you do
I know.
that?
Like, help me out here.
Who said that?
You know, I've had some really good conversations with the inspectors. You know, I'm the CEO, so I'm not always speaking with them, but I got a lot of feedback, and I told them, listen, this is what I'm hearing. At the end of the day, we are here to provide customer service to the best that we can.
Sure.
So how can we get to that? And again, I think by reducing that HQS, I think that's going to make a big difference, because I think a lot of the things that some of the landlords were being dinged for were, at the end of the day, they were cosmetic.
Sure.
These were things that, okay, you in the HQS book it says that the whole interior of the house is supposed to be painted every 5 years. Really, are we going to fail a unit on that? You know, because it's got scuffs on the wall. That's something between me and you as a landlord and a tenant.
Right.
You know, so I think it will reduce those things. I'm hopeful it is. Are things going to still happen? Yes. But this is an evolving process. And maybe something that we do now might not work. We've got to change it up. But we're open to any of those suggestions or kinks that you see in the process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
So is the re-inspection necessary anymore, or we can send you the pictures of the stuff that they found later on? That's question one.
Yes.
Over the years, the biggest complaint our members have, in the Section 8, is when they go there, do an inspection, they give a list of 2 pages full of whatever it is. And then the next time the re-inspection comes in, they did not stick to that list. They went above and beyond that list, find new stuff. That just increases.
And I think that's what she brought up, that, you know, can we get the same inspectors, because, you know, they're seeing different things. So just to repeat his question, are the re-inspections going to be necessary now if the photos, and how to address when you have a second inspector find different things? So I will tell you, we are getting ready to fully roll out the photos. We were doing it as a pilot to try and work out the kinks before everybody, just to make sure we had the manpower and who was going to be responsible. So that's going to be coming very soon, and we'll be putting that announcement out. Having said that, I think if you take advantage of that, you're not going to have a second inspector in your home, basically inspecting it again. So we're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Other housing authorities have done this and done it successfully, so it can be done, and it's time that we do it as well. Yes. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I can make a suggestion on your standards, and yes, this is what I do for a living. If you could possibly eliminate all the conditional words like should and may and can, and to replace them with words that will have a yes or no.
Shall or must.
Shall or must, that might be kind of formal, but please do not get into the always, sometimes, maybe, and except. I believe that would be a lot easier on the inspectors and on the landlords.
Are you talking about in regards to the inspections?
No, I'm reading the latest copy of your standards I got. it has a whole lot of opinions and not very many standards.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
you're
shooting
talking
at
about
you,
our
that's what it
HQS,
is.
our Housing Quality Standards booklet?
Yeah.
Yes.
It
Those
could be about
are
a quarter
things-
that long if it had standards instead of permissions and allowances and understandings.
No, I agree. And that's
Thanks.
one of the things that we're looking at. Like I said, we're trying to cut it down. I don't want to say the bare minimum, because we still have to have standards.
We still have to have facts,
But really health and safety. So, thank you. Yes.
I have a question about Section 8 overall, let's say nationwide. Each county determines how they want to run it. And so that's why it's so different from everywhere. Even Greene County is different from you guys. So you guys determine, do you then need permission from HUD to implement the way you want to run it?
So that's a good question. So for those of you who didn't hear, how much flexibility do we have as a local public housing authority to do certain things different ways? The answer to that is yes and no. So I would say probably about 80% of the rules and regulations that HUD puts on us. We have the federal code. Most of it is mandatory. You have to run your program this way. But they do give us some flexibility in some instances, okay? Some of them we can just do on our own with approval from the community and our board of directors. Some of them we can do, but we got to get approval from HUD first. Some of them you just cannot do. You got to do it one way or the other. So I'll give you an example. Local preferences. Remember when I said we give preferences to people, victims of domestic violence, veterans? That's something that HUD leaves up to the local jurisdiction. So that's an example. Rent reasonable and doing HQS inspections and how we do them, we have to do those. Those we have no flexibility on. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. Yes?
I was wondering, for people that apply for the housing choice voucher, how often are you making them reapply to see if they qualify? And then if they were to be terminated from the program, how soon does the landlord get notified that there's going to be some change?
Okay, good question. So I think the question is, how often do people who are on the waiting list? No, they actually have it. Okay. How often do they have to recertify? That's every year. They have to income recertify every year for everybody in the household. Adults, children, everybody. And then your second question is, how is the landlord notified if the tenant portion of the rent is changed? Is that what you're asking?
Your portion, like if they just don't qualify anymore, maybe there's a huge adjustment.
So what should happen is, it can happen a couple different ways. Say I come in for my annual recertification and my income goes up. We are doing those annual recertifications 60 days before it is due, is when we start doing them, because people miss appointments. You should then, within 30 days, if there is going to be a rent balance change, you should get a notification. So it would probably say, tenant Jane, her new tenant portion is $100, and the portion from the housing authority is now $600, where maybe before her portion was $50 and the public housing authority's portion was $650. You should be getting those 30 days before the rent change. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes, Sharon.
The landlord wants to, housing provider wants to go up on the rent.
Yes.
How much in advance notice do you need to have before the lease expires?
I believe we have it in our administrative plan. I believe it's 60 days. We want you to let us know. You're allowed one rent increase a year. We would ask that you do that. The way that we have our plan written is prior to the lease renewal. Let us know what you want. You'll have a sheet that talks about any amenities. We have to do that rent reasonable, so say you maybe want to increase it $250. We're going to go through that whole calculation, run it through the rent reasonable, and then come back and tell you if that's allowed. You're welcome. Yeah.
You can't see me.
No, you're fine.
The amenities you're talking about, what exactly are you considering?
You're going to test my memory. Because I'm not down there doing the rent reasonables. But it's typically, it's your washer and dryer unit, air conditioning.
Microwave.
Yeah, it could be.
Dishwasher.
He probably knows better than I do there as a landlord, but it's just those typical things that you would advertise that you have.
And then our most recent renewal, which renewed in August, started in April.
Okay.
Yeah. They sent out that paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I put down what we were increasing the rent to, and had my resident sign it, turned it in. And then when it came back, she had to be recertified, I guess, too. But the amount that came out in the paper did not add up to my new rent.
Okay.
Which was reasonable, but your specialist totally missed it until just a couple days before it was going to be going into effect. I had to send an email, and I think I copied you or somebody else.
You may have.
Anyway, yeah. And
Did they correct it?
They did.
Okay, good.
They did. But I expected it. I guess I shouldn't have waited a month when I saw it originally, that it was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be mistakes, and we recognize that. We want whatever we do to be correct. So if you feel something is wrong or just reach out. I mean, you guys can, landlords contact me all the time. All the time. And that's fine, because at the end of the day, it helps me keep a pulse on what's going on down there also. So it helps me at the end of the day. But I probably get emails from landlords 3, 4, 5 times a week.
And then the other thing I was going to say about that one is that I always requested a new lease when they don't do lease signings. That's what I was told.
You mean that they don't do the lease signings with you? You can still do the lease, a new lease, right?
With my.
But with us, we don't require you to come down. No, we don't require you. If you and the tenant want to sign a new lease, you guys can do that on your own. We're not going to make you come downtown. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. I have some cards, and it's got my email address and my phone number. I will tell you, sometimes I'm difficult to get by phone, but I will tell you, I am on my email all the time. You will see email responses from me at 9 o'clock at night or on the weekend. I always have access to it, so it really is the best.
Just want to make a comment.
Yes.
I've been dealing with sections for 30 years. The first time I've seen so many changes being considered.
Yes.
Taking into consideration.
Yes.
Big change.
We've had some change in leadership, and it's time for a whole change of how we interact, how we provide customer service. The only thing I ask is that you be patient with us. Thank you. No, I appreciate it.
That'll be it for tonight, guys. Thank you. Push your chair back.
great source of information for real estate investors. You can learn what you need to do to succeed. You can learn the different opportunities that there are in the marketplace, and you can meet a lot of people that know about this from their own experience.
It's a fantastic organization because you can network with more seasoned investors. You meet all kinds of different vendors each time, insurance companies, title companies. There's always a different group of people here. And even though I've been involved in real estate since '99, every time I come to a meeting I learn something different. You could also find contractors here. It's just a really great way to network.
The benefits that I've gotten from GDAA over the years is being able to tap into a pool of knowledge from experienced investors, experienced speakers that allow me to overcome any obstacles I might have from what I'm not familiar with.
GDAA, we learned that this is a team sport, and being a landlord requires quite a few people to help. In GDAA, we found our accountant, attorney, property manager, realtor who furnishes the leads for the properties, and I believe the appraisers.
GDAA in 2010 to invest. The whole team was there. I had a property manager, realtors who had deals, and now I have 4 houses that are all turnkey solutions. I've invested in private LLCs. I didn't bought a note. So by joining an organization like GDAA, you too can learn how to be a good investor.
And we are an approved vendor with GDAA. We've been with you guys about 4 or 5 years now, and we love networking with the members, and we're here to help. So anything that they need help with, you can find us here every meeting and ask us whatever questions you need to.